The Mandalorian is without doubt the most popular piece of Star Wars to be released under Disney. And ever since Season 1 hit our TV screens, fans have been wondering just how far Din Grogu's story can go.
You want to work for the New Republic?
Well, jump into your starfighters and strap in because there's been updates on that front. However, it's not all good news.
All right, pal. It's time to go.
But fortunately, I think there's more to this than meets the eye. We'll get into all the latest updates, make sense of it all, and also put in a few of our theories on where the Mandalorian Grogu movie goes from here.
It's a good deal and you know it.
So without further ado, thanks for clicking this. Don't forget to give the video a thumbs up and subscribe if you want to catch more. Now let's get into the Mandalorian and Grogu.
I want to give you this deed to a cabin just outside of town where you can lay low with your new family if you choose so. Between adventures.
Thank you.
Okay, so where we left Din and Grogu, they just played a massive part in reuniting the Mandalorians and returning them to Mandalore. Once they go back there, they quickly discovered Moff Gideon's Imperial remnants, had established a base there, and are now conducting experiments to create an army of Beskar-wearing, Force-sensitive Moff Gideon clones, giving him the one power he never had. But with a little help from Bo-Katan and the others, Gideon and his rogue group of Imperial remnants were defeated and Mandalore was reclaimed. I'm not 100% convinced this will be the last we see of Gideon, as if he was really a clever guy, he would have had backup clones kept elsewhere off-world. This is also hinted at in The Mandalorian Season 2, where they discover an early prototype of Gideon's clone in the Imperial facility on Navarro. Anyways, Din officially adopts Grogu in the ceremony,
Then I will adopt him as my own.
at the end of Season 3, whilst also taking him under his wing as an official Mandalorian apprentice. Their story concludes with landing a more permanent gig through Carson Teva with the New Republic, where they'll help defend the Outer Rim from any Imperial remnants, as the New Republic's resources are already spread pretty thin, and they're unable to effectively cover it. Now, whilst this is where we last left Din and Grogu, we do know there's so much more that's happened in the galaxy since then that will affect them. In Ahsoka, we saw Grand Admiral Thrawn escape Peridea, with the legendary group of Night Sisters known as the Great Mothers returning to the galaxy with their power backing him up as he arrived on Dathomir, whilst Ahsoka, Sabine and Huyang effectively swapped places with him and are now stuck on the desolate wasteland. Ezra did make it home, so it's not all doom and gloom, but the New Republic had gained one fighter and lost two. Now, it's no secret The Mandalorian is by far the most popular story to come out of Star Wars since Disney acquired it. So much so that after 3 successful seasons on Disney+, they decided the next chapter of the story would be on the big screen in a movie. Whilst it's seen by many as a positive and a step in the right direction, the truth of the matter is it's being used to paper over some cracks behind the scenes at Lucasfilm. After the sequel trilogy concluded, Disney changed CEOs, with their new one at the time wanting to push Star Wars and Marvel into a different direction. With the launch of Disney+, the idea was to put out a lot more stories in the form of TV shows straight onto streaming. Now, this really worked initially because at the time most of the world were told to stay at home, unable to go out and do our usual day-to-day stuff. Sitting in front of the TV, for me at least, became a bit of a go-to. However, since then things have largely gone back to normal, and in reflection of that, the viewing numbers of Disney Plus shows, including Star Wars and The Mandalorian, have been on a downwards trajectory. The Mandalorian Season 2 was the very peak. And then on the other end of things, there's The Acolyte, where it struggled with views so much it didn't justify the massive budget invested and it was cancelled. Now, the last thing you'd expect to happen right now after all of its success and the way it's really dragged Star Wars through its tough time since 2019 is to end The Mandalorian.
It's time to go.
The idea behind making the movie in the first place was to put the most popular story they had on Disney Plus into the theatres, signalling the return of Star Wars to the big screen. However, word making the rounds right now is that this will not only signal the return of Star Wars, but it'll also act as the closing chapter of the Mandalorian story. It's said that after the movie releases, there won't be a second Mandalorian and Grogu movie, despite if it does well or not, whilst it also won't be returning to Disney Plus for a Season 4. Now, as with anything online, it should always be taken with a grain of salt. However, it's also worth noting here that even all the way back to the second season of The Mandalorian, after they introduced characters like Boba Fett and Ahsoka, both of which shortly after were confirmed to be getting their own shows, was that they always intended The Mandalorian to go out this way in a movie on the big screen. The fact that this ties in with their original plans for the character outlined years ago means it needs to be taken seriously. Now, if this is the direction they're really looking to take with The Mandalorian, then without doubt, they're dropping the ball big time. It's their biggest success financially since the sequels, and the show's turned out to be a merchandise money bank, with characters like Grogu filling toy shops across the world. So to be honest, ending The Mandalorian this early, when it feels like we're only really getting started with the character and his wider involvement in the overall Star Wars story, which we'll get into more in a moment, seems a little off. Now, all of this could just be false and not true whatsoever, but I don't really think that's the case here either. I feel the truth here lies somewhere in the middle. Let's not forget, the primary showrunner of The Mandalorian is Jon Favreau, who's also known for kicking off the MCU with the Iron Man movies, and in a similar fashion to what Favreau did with Iron Man, we've already seen him do with The Mandalorian, and that Din's already crossed over into the Book of Boba Fett. He likes these interconnected stories where one regularly crosses over into the other, so there's a real chance that although he might not get a second Mandalorian movie or another season, that the character will continue to appear in other characters' movies or shows for many years to come. But then the other possibility here is that nothing drastic will happen after all. I mean, after the announcement of the movie, I never really expected The Mandalorian to go back to being a Disney Plus show anyway. I always felt that once it went big screen, it would stay there. So instead, what they could actually be doing is returning to a more traditional Star Wars format afterwards by actually titling the movies that follow away from utilizing character names. Like an example of this would be the Star Wars movie that's in development by Dave Filoni, rumoured to be called Heir to the Empire, or even James Mangold's Star Wars movie, rumoured to be called Dawn of the Jedi. So although the movie afterwards wouldn't be called The Mandalorian Grogu Part 2, for example, or whatever, it would still essentially be that, just with a more traditional Star Wars title. Like, think back to the original trilogy for a moment. They didn't call A New Hope Luke Skywalker because it wasn't just about him, it was about all of the characters involved, which could be the direction they're taking here, which has just got muddled in the translation a little. Anyways, going back to what I said earlier about the idea of them ending The Mandalorian now making no sense, that's because with the upcoming movie, it's like they're giving the character a clean slate of sorts anyway, with how Din and Grogu's journey concluded in Season 3. If they wanted to end the story there, it would have been the perfect time to do so. The battle against Gideon had been won. No one was after Grogu anymore, and they looked set to live a quieter life as a family on Navarro. But what they also did by doing that was that they left him free to deal with another far bigger conflict on the horizon, with Thrawn's return to the main galaxy. I think the movie will probably lean heavily on what made Season 1 such a success in the first place, where it took place largely away from the galaxy's bigger events, where we had this lone gunslinger making his way on the fringes of the galaxy. So we'll probably get a few more smaller missions to kick things off there too, and really introduce the character to the wider audience. However, with the events of Ahsoka taking place, and Din and Grogu now working for the New Republic on a case-by-case basis, protecting the Outer Rim from Imperial remnants, there's no chance that won't lead to them encountering increased Imperial activity due to Thrawn's return.
A frightening reality for those who may oppose us,
as they gear up to launch an attack on the New Republic and reclaim the galaxy. Right now it seems they are retelling the original Thrawn trilogy of books, where we saw a war between the New Republic and the Remnants, where it had characters like Luke, Leia, Han involved in the fight. Possibly this live-action retelling will as well, but also likely have characters from these interconnected Disney Plus shows as a driving force too, like from The Mandalorian, from Boba Fett and Ahsoka, and maybe after this story is told, perhaps then, just then, we'll see the end of The Mandalorian. Din as a character, he can't last forever, and perhaps just like Iron Man, his death will be a way to cap off this chapter of the galaxy, likely in a sacrifice for saving Grogu. Of course, Grogu, given the slow nature in which his species ages, will go on to live for many more years as a fully fledged Force-sensitive Mandalorian trained by Din Djarin. He could go on to appear in so many more projects, probably for the rest of our lifetimes if I'm honest. He could appear in any movie that comes after the events of Episode 9. He could appear in a movie that's set 500 years after the rise of Skywalker. So even though Din will eventually die, I think at the end of this conflict with Thrawn, his legacy will go on to live far into the future through Grogu. Anyways, The Mandalorian, both as a character and as a story, really is the one thing they've really got going for them at the moment, with every other show slowly on the decline in recent years. Mando's consistently been a big hit, so in regards to the Mandalorian and Grogu movie being the end of Din Djarin's arc in Star Wars, I kind of have to say yes and no. Yes, being that I could see it being the only movie that's solely his, and I don't see them doing a Season 4 on Disney Plus, as that feels too much like a step back, but knowing that his story almost definitely will continue afterwards, likely appearing in Dave Filoni's movie, which will be the movie where it all really heats up between the New Republic and the Imperial Remnants. and perhaps another movie that follows that one too, essentially turning the 3 movies into a trilogy of sorts. Whilst there's also a chance he could appear in other Disney Plus shows, let's say they did a Boba Fett Season 2 or a Bo-Katan series, or even in the 2nd season of Ahsoka. Of course, the character of Din Djarin can't go on forever, he will eventually die.
You have suffered damage to your central processing unit.
And yeah, there's a real possibility that will be shown to us on screen, which could only be a few years away from now, come the end of the Thrawn stuff. I don't expect him to be going anywhere anytime soon at least. I think he's going to be a big player in the movies going forwards. As I said earlier on guys, we should always take everything that comes from the internet with a pinch of salt. Sometimes it's spot on, sometimes it couldn't be further from the truth. However, with this one, and it's really the reason I wanted to cover it today, I think it sits somewhere in the middle. Half truth in that yes, there's a chance there won't be another movie or show titled The Mandalorian, but also a bit misleading in that the character will continue to be a major player in the wider story going forwards, likely being a big part of it right up until the end. Anyways, I want to know your thoughts. Do you think they'll close out The Mandalorian with this next movie, or do you think he's still a big part of the story for many years to come? As always, drop your thoughts, theories and wildest speculations down in the comments below. We've also just put out a video detailing the new direction Star Wars looks to be taken going forwards, so I'll drop that link in there if you want to check it out. But don't forget to leave a thumbs up on this video if you've enjoyed it, and subscribe to the channel if you'd like to catch more. I'll see you in the next one. May the Force be with you.